Hey there, English learners. Welcome to English Podcast 2.0, the podcast where learning English gets fun, easy, and totally relatable.
All right, so get ready to dive deep. We're taking a closer look at your notes on learning English through conversation. It looks like you've really been hitting the books, the podcasts, the articles. I've got to say, I'm right there with you. This stuff is fascinating.
Yeah.
Our goal here is to go through all this incredible information you've gathered and try to pull out the most valuable insights, those nuggets of wisdom, the things that are really going to help you improve your conversational fluency.
Right.
And luckily, I've got just the right person to help us make sense of it all.
Well, it's great to be here.
The language whiz who can connect the dots between, what the experts are saying and how it actually works in the real world.
Oh, stop it.
Oh, come on.
You're embarrassing me.
No, I'm not. So one thing that really jumps out from your notes is this emphasis on actually speaking the language.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? It seems like everyone from experienced language teachers to, podcast hosts is really emphasizing the importance of conversational practice.
Totally. And it makes sense, right? Because, we've all been there. You study the grammar rules, you memorize vocabulary lists, but sometimes it feels like there's something missing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You highlighted this great quote from Emma, the English tutor, in your notes. She says, "Speaking is where all the magic happens. You start connecting words to emotions, culture, and real-life situations."
Yeah, that's a good one.
But why is this magic so powerful? Why does conversation seem to unlock fluency in a way that, traditional methods often don't?
Think about it this way. When you're just studying grammar or vocabulary, it's mostly a passive process, right? You're just taking it in.
Right.
But conversation throws you into the deep end.
It does.
All of a sudden, you're not just recognizing words.
Yeah.
You have to retrieve them. You have to pull them out of your brain. You're putting them together. You're adapting on the fly to the flow of a real conversation. It forces your brain to work so much harder. And I think that's what creates those neural pathways that lead to real fluency.
Right. So it's like a workout for your brain. You're pushing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where the magic comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about the technical stuff. It's about connecting with another human being, expressing yourself in a genuine way, and figuring out how to handle real life situations. And you know what really drives this home?
What's that?
You flagged Liam's story, the podcast host, who talks about learning Spanish by just having conversations.
Yeah.
He says he learned 10 times faster that way compared to using apps or textbooks.
It's true. It's like he found a secret shortcut.
Right.
Bypassed the whole system.
Yeah.
And Liam's experience isn't unique.
Right.
A lot of language learners have reported the same results. You put yourself out there, you use the language in real life. That's when you really start to internalize it.
It's like the difference between reading a cookbook, right?
Right.
And then actually going into the kitchen and cooking.
Right.
You get your hands dirty. But there's one thing that I found really interesting that both Emma and Liam talked about. They both say that, you shouldn't worry too much about being perfect, especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
Focus on communicating, even if you make some mistakes along the way. Emma actually says, even if you make mistakes, people will understand and appreciate your effort.
I think that's such a refreshing perspective. What do you think?
I think it's true. People are usually pretty understanding, but it's not just about lowering the bar either. It's more about understanding that fluency isn't something you just achieve overnight. It's a journey.
It's a process.
And every mistake, every time you stumble, every time you hesitate, those are all stepping stones.
Yeah.
They're opportunities to learn, to get better, and to become more confident in what you can do.
So it's like embracing the messiness of it all.
Exactly.
Trusting that ultimately it's going to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, I think so. Let's get practical. You've got a whole bunch of conversation starters highlighted in your notes. Things like, how's your day going?
Right.
Or, what do you think about this? These seem pretty basic, but I'm guessing there's more to them than meets the eye.
Right.
What's the secret? How do you use these simple phrases to actually start a conversation that's engaging and interesting?
Well, I think the key is intention.
Okay.
It's not about just saying the words like a robot. you have to mean them, you know?
Right.
You're using them to connect with someone. Think about what you want to say. Are you showing that you're curious about the other person? Are you trying to be empathetic? Are you trying to find things you have in common?
So it's not just about the words themselves. It's about the energy behind them.
Yes.
The feeling.
A whole other layer.
I like that. It adds a whole other layer to something as simple as how's your day going? And, you also highlighted what Liam said about asking questions. He says, think of it as a two-way street. Asking questions in conversations makes learning interactive and fun. I love that analogy.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's like you're not just passively absorbing information, you're actively seeking it out. And that makes learning so much more engaging, right? Speaking of making things fun and interactive, you flagged a really interesting section in your notes about a role play scenario between Liam and Emma.
Oh, yeah, I love that one. They're basically pretending to meet for the first time. They're using compliments and asking about accents to kind of break the ice and get the conversation going. It's a really clever approach.
It is, and it's so simple, but it works.
Yeah.
They even complimented each other's pronunciation.
Yeah.
It's like a little confidence boost right off the bat.
It is.
But what do you think the real takeaway is here?
I think it's about understanding how conversations actually work. It's realizing that even casual chats are built on being curious, being engaged, and being willing to connect with the other person on a human level.
So it's like they're giving us a blueprint
In a way.
for how to approach conversations with confidence and authenticity,
Yeah.
even if you're still kind of getting your footing with the language.
Exactly.
Now, beyond those initial icebreakers, you've highlighted a ton of topics that are supposed to be great for keeping the conversation flowing. Things like movies, hobbies, travel, food. What makes these topics such universal connectors? Why do they work across cultures?
Think about it. These are all things that are fundamental to being human. We all have our favorite movies, hobbies we're passionate about, places we dream of traveling to, and foods we crave.
Right.
They give us common ground, a place to start sharing our stories, our perspectives, our passions, and that's what makes them so powerful.
Right.
They tap into something universal that resonates with everyone, regardless of their background.
I love that. But I also noticed you flagged some topics that are specific to Crete. Things like, what's your favorite Greek dish? Or can you recommend a beautiful place to visit nearby? Why do you think it's important to weave in topics that are relevant to the local culture and context?
I think it adds a layer of richness and authenticity to the conversation. It shows that you're not just interested in practicing your English.
Right.
You're interested in learning about the place and the people you're interacting with.
It's like you're saying, I'm here, I'm present, and I'm genuinely curious about your culture and your perspective.
Exactly.
And it can lead to some really special interactions.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've talked about conversation starters, engaging topics, role-playing. I'm fascinated by these interactive exercises you've got in your notes. Things like repeating phrases after Emma and practicing listening and responding. What makes those exercises so effective?
It's all about active participation,
Okay.
You're taking what you've learned and putting it into practice. By actually speaking, listening, and responding, you're reinforcing what you've learned and building muscle memory for communication.
It's like taking the language off the page and making it real.
Exactly.
But I'm curious, how do those exercises help with the challenges that a lot of language learners face?
Like what?
Like being afraid of making mistakes or feeling shy about speaking up.
I think every time you do one of these exercises, you're taking a small step outside your comfort zone.
Okay.
You're stretching your language muscles, you're gaining confidence, and you're proving to yourself that you can do it.
Okay. That makes sense. It's like building up a tolerance
In a way.
for the discomfort that sometimes comes with learning a language. But let's be real. Even with all the practice in the world, there are going to be times when you feel shy or you doubt yourself. What advice do Emma and Liam offer for those moments? You've got a ton of their quotes highlighted, so I'm guessing this is something you've thought about a lot.
It's a common problem. And I think one of Emma's pieces of advice is really helpful. She says, remember, even native speakers mess up sometimes. Focus on improving, not being perfect.
That's so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about shifting your perspective.
It is.
It's not about being perfect. It's about getting better over time.
Exactly.
But how do we actually internalize that and stop being so hard on ourselves?
It starts with being kind to yourself.
Okay.
Recognize that making mistakes is a natural part of learning.
Yeah.
It's how you grow, it's how you refine your skills, and it's how you eventually become fluent.
So instead of seeing mistakes as failures, we should see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly.
Let's talk about building confidence. You've highlighted a bunch of tips, things like daily practice and recording yourself speaking. Why are these techniques so effective?
I think it's like training for a marathon, you know? You wouldn't expect to just run 26 miles on your first day.
Right.
You start small, you build up your mileage as you get stronger and increase your stamina.
Okay, so you're saying daily practice, even if it's just a few minutes, helps you build your language muscles, so to speak.
Exactly. And recording yourself.
Yeah, recording yourself. I have to admit that one makes me cringe a little bit.
I know, it can be a bit awkward at first, but think of it like a tool. You can assess yourself, you can listen to yourself objectively, and then you can figure out what you're doing well and what you need to work on.
So it's like having a language coach in your pocket.
Exactly.
Giving you feedback, helping you figure out where you need to improve. It's like seeing your progress come to life.
Yeah, it's really motivating.
It is. And that brings us to another point you mentioned about building confidence.
What's that?
Recognizing and celebrating your accomplishments.
Yes.
Okay, tell me more about that. Tell me about celebrating those language wins.
You have to acknowledge how far you've come.
Yeah.
Remember that feeling when you had your first basic conversation in English? Or when you finally figured out that grammar rule that was driving you crazy?
Oh yeah, those moments are the best.
Right, and they're worth celebrating. Treat yourself to something nice, share it with a friend, or just take a moment to acknowledge how hard you've been working.
Yeah, I love that. Give yourself a pat on the back. It's like giving yourself permission to be proud of your progress.
Exactly.
Even if you're not fluent yet.
Exactly.
You know, with all this talk about confidence and overcoming challenges, there's one thing that's been on my mind.
Okay, what's that?
We've talked a lot about, embracing imperfection.
Yeah.
And focusing on communication over perfection. But how do we balance that with the need to be accurate and to keep improving?
That's a good question.
I mean, is there a risk of getting complacent if we just keep telling ourselves that it's okay to make mistakes?
That's a really good question. Embracing imperfection doesn't mean you can just make the same mistakes over and over.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that you're going to make mistakes.
Right.
But there are also really valuable opportunities to learn.
Right.
So you have to find that balance between accepting where you are now and striving to get better.
It's like we're not just learning a language, we're learning how to learn, period.
Exactly.
And that's a skill that we can apply to everything in life.
Absolutely. Which brings us to something else that's important. Finding language partners or conversation groups.
Yes.
Have you thought about that?
You know, I've been wanting to ask you about that. I've heard so much about all these online platforms and language exchange programs.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm a little overwhelmed by all the options. What are your thoughts on finding the right language partner?
Well, I think the most important thing is finding someone that you're comfortable with.
Right.
Someone who shares your interests and someone who's working towards similar goals as you are.
So it's not just about finding a native speaker, it's about finding someone who you connect with.
Exactly. And you should be upfront about what you expect from the partnership and how you like to communicate. You know, do you prefer structured conversations or more casual chats? Do you want to focus on specific grammar points or just practice speaking freely?
Right. It's like setting ground rules
Yeah.
for a successful partnership. But, beyond the practical side of things, I'm also curious about the emotional benefits of having a language partner.
Yeah.
What kind of impact can that connection have on your motivation and your overall experience?
It's huge. Think about it. Learning a language can be a really vulnerable thing.
It is.
You're putting yourself out there, you're making mistakes, and sometimes it's frustrating and discouraging.
Yeah.
Having a supportive partner who understands those challenges can make a big difference.
It's like having a cheerleader in your corner, someone who believes in you and is there to celebrate those wins, no matter how small.
Exactly.
And speaking of wins, you've got a bunch of quotes from Emma and Liam about celebrating those small wins, about being kind to yourself during the process. Why is it so important to acknowledge those small steps forward?
Especially when you're just starting out. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
It is.
You're going to have moments where you're frustrated, moments where you feel like you're not making progress. But in those moments, you have to remember how far you've come.
Yeah.
Think back to that first time you managed to get through a simple greeting in English.
Right.
And look at you now having this complex conversation.
That's a great point. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day struggle that we forget to acknowledge how far we've already come.
It really is.
But how do you stay motivated and avoid burnout when things get tough?
What helps you?
You've highlighted so many tips for staying engaged, so I'm hoping you can share some wisdom here.
One of the best things you can do is find ways to make learning fun.
Yeah.
This is about expanding your horizons, connecting with new cultures, opening up a whole new world of communication. It shouldn't feel like a chore.
Right.
It should be enjoyable.
I love that. So it's about finding that sweet spot between being disciplined and having fun.
Exactly.
Right. You have to create a routine that feels good, that you can actually stick with, even when it gets hard.
Yeah. You know, you highlighted some great ideas about using games and activities. I'm all about that. I love a good game. So tell me more. Making learning feel like an adventure.
Yes.
I love finding ways to tap into my competitive spirit, and there are so many games and apps out there that are specifically designed for language learners.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's like sneaking in some learning while you're having fun.
Yeah. But what kinds of games are best for building conversational fluency?
Right, because it can't just be about vocabulary drills.
Right.
Are there games that actually help you practice real-life communication?
Games that involve role-playing, storytelling, or problem-solving? Those are the best.
Yeah.
They force you to think on your feet, use the language creatively, adapt to different situations.
So it's not just about memorizing. It's about actually using the language in a way that feels dynamic. Speaking of dynamic, you highlighted this really interesting concept, immersing yourself in English as much as possible.
Yeah, even if you don't live in an English-speaking country.
Exactly.
That's the challenge.
So how do you create that kind of environment without hopping on a plane?
Well, think about all the ways you already interact with language. Movies, music, podcasts, books, social media.
Right.
Those are all opportunities. Surround yourself with the language.
You're basically creating your own little English-speaking world.
You are, exactly. What are some of your favorite ways to do that? Do you have any go-to strategies?
What are yours?
Well, one of my favorite things to do is choose media that aligns with my interests. So, like, if you're a fan of cooking shows, watch them in English.
Right.
If you're into the news, tune into English language news channels.
So you're making it enjoyable, something that you're actually interested in. But, you know, you've also talked a lot about personalizing your learning experience, which I think is so important. Why is it so crucial to tailor your language practice to your individual interests and goals?
Because when you're actually interested in what you're learning, it's more fun. And you learn better.
Right. It makes a huge difference.
It's like, would you rather study a boring textbook for an hour? Or would you rather spend an hour watching a documentary on something you're fascinated by?
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's like the difference between forcing yourself to eat your vegetables or having a delicious dessert. But how do you strike that balance?
Between what?
Between enjoying the process and staying focused on your goals. It's so easy to get distracted by all the fun stuff.
It is. It's all about self-awareness. Check in with yourself. Are you genuinely enjoying this activity? Or are you just procrastinating?
That's a great point. We need to become our own language learning coaches.
We do. Keep track of your progress. Make changes if you need to. You've got this.
Yeah, you've got to be in the driver's seat.
But you also highlighted a bunch of techniques for dealing with setbacks. For those times when you feel stuck, what advice would you give someone who's feeling that way?
First of all, setbacks are normal.
Yeah.
Everyone hits them. It's not a failure.
It's part of the process.
It is. It's an opportunity to grow.
So instead of thinking I'm stuck, think I'm learning.
Exactly. So how do you actually move past those plateaus and get back on track? What are some strategies you found helpful?
And I'm glad you asked, because you've got some good ones in your notes.
Well, the first thing you need to do is figure out what's causing the plateau.
Right. Figure out why you're stuck.
Are you overwhelmed by how much there is to learn? Are you struggling with a specific grammar concept? Are you not getting enough chances to practice speaking?
Right. So it's like diagnosing the problem. And once you've done that,
then what?
How do you actually address the issue?
That's when you have to start experimenting. If you're feeling overwhelmed, break your goals down into smaller steps.
If you're stuck on a grammar concept, find more resources. Ask a teacher for help.
Right.
If you need more speaking practice, join a conversation group or find a language partner.
You're like a language learning scientist.
A little bit.
Testing out hypotheses, seeing what works.
Yeah. But beyond the strategies and techniques, I think mindset is everything. You have so many quotes in your notes about the power of belief.
Yes.
And about staying positive even when it's hard. Why do you think mindset is so crucial?
I think it's because if you believe that you can do it, that you can learn English, you're more likely to put in the work. You're more likely to keep going when it gets tough. And ultimately, you're more likely to achieve your goals.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
What you believe shapes your actions, and your actions shape your results.
Exactly. But how do you cultivate that mindset? Especially when you're struggling with self-doubt.
Focus on your progress, no matter how small it seems.
Yeah.
Remember those moments when you realize, hey, I'm actually getting this.
I love those moments.
And they're worth celebrating.
Absolutely.
Whether it's treating yourself to your favorite dessert, sharing your accomplishment with a friend, or just taking a moment to acknowledge your own hard work, it's important to reinforce those positive feelings and remind yourself that you can achieve your goals.
I love that. So we need to give ourselves permission to be proud of our progress,
We do.
even if we're not fluent yet.
Exactly.
But there's something else I've been thinking about, and it's about balancing the desire to learn English quickly with the reality that it takes time and effort.
That's a big word.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype of these Learn English in 30 days programs.
Yeah.
But we also have to be realistic, right?
It's easy to get pulled in by those promises of quick fixes.
Yeah.
But the reality is, learning a language is a process. There are no shortcuts.
Right.
It takes consistent effort, dedication, and a willingness to embrace the journey.
So it's about setting those ambitious goals, but being patient along the way.
It is. And you've highlighted a lot of techniques for dealing with frustration.
Those moments when you just want to give up, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling overwhelmed, who's feeling discouraged by the challenges of learning English?
I think it's important to remember that you're not alone. Every language learner faces those moments of frustration and self-doubt.
It's part of the process.
Exactly. We're all in this together, navigating those ups and downs.
We are. But what about those times when you just feel like giving up?
Yeah. How do you pick yourself up and keep going?
That's where self-compassion comes in. And resilience. You have to realize that setbacks are going to happen. They don't define you or your ability to succeed.
So it's about finding that inner strength
It is.
and reminding yourself that you can overcome those challenges.
Exactly. You know, beyond the mental and emotional side of language learning, there's also the physical side of things. You've highlighted some great tips for creating a space that helps you focus and be more productive. What are some of your favorite ways to set up a language learning sanctuary? I'm all about creating a space that feels inspiring. I like to surround myself with things that remind me of my goals and why I'm on this journey in the first place.
So you're creating a visual reminder of your dreams, a space that motivates you to keep going.
Exactly. It's about setting the stage for success.
But what are some of the must-have items for your language learning toolkit?
Well, besides the obvious stuff like textbooks, dictionaries, and notebooks, I would definitely recommend investing in some noise-canceling headphones.
Oh yeah, those are lifesavers.
Right. You need a comfortable chair, a well-lit workspace.
Yeah, you gotta be comfortable.
You're creating an environment that supports your learning and minimizes distractions. But let's talk about finding the right resources and tools. You've highlighted so many different options. Online courses, language learning apps, textbooks, language exchange partners.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming.
It can be.
What advice would you give to someone who's feeling a little lost?
I think the first step is figuring out your learning style. Are you a visual learner, an auditory learner, kinesthetic? Do you prefer structured lessons or more immersive experiences?
Right. So it's like you need to create a language learning profile.
Yeah.
Figure out your strength, weaknesses, preferences.
Exactly.
And once you've done that,
Then you can start experimenting. Try different apps, explore online courses, look through textbooks.
talk to other language learners.
Yeah, get their recommendations.
That's like we're on a quest. We're language learning detectives,
Exactly.
looking for clues that'll lead us to the perfect resources and tools.
Yeah, I love that.
But, you know, I think one of the most important things is consistency.
It's huge.
You've highlighted so many strategies for creating a sustainable learning routine, sticking with it, even when life gets busy. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling to make language learning a regular part of their life?
I think it's all about habit formation.
Okay.
The best way to create a routine that sticks is to integrate it with your existing habits.
So finding those pockets of time throughout the day.
Exactly. Work it into your schedule.
Yeah, like it's just a natural part of what you do every day. But what about those days when you're just exhausted?
Yeah, we all have them.
Is it okay to take a break? Or should you just push yourself to stick with the routine no matter what?
Listen to your body and your mind.
Okay.
If you're burnt out, take a break. Adjust your routine if you need to.
So it's about finding that balance between consistency and self-care.
It is. Rest and rejuvenation are important,
They are.
just as much as discipline and dedication.
But, beyond the practical stuff, one of the most rewarding things about learning a language is that feeling of accomplishment, that sense of personal growth.
Yeah.
You've highlighted some incredible stories from language learners who talk about how learning English has changed their lives, opened up new opportunities.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is, and it's really given them a new perspective on the world. What are some of the stories that have inspired you the most?
I'm constantly amazed by the power of language learning to transform people's lives. I've met people who have gotten their dream jobs because they learned English, people who have traveled to incredible places, people who have formed really deep connections with people from all over the world. And all of that was made possible because they learned to communicate in English.
Like language opens up a whole new world.
It does.
A world of possibilities.
It is like a passport.
It is. It connects you to people and experiences that you might never have had otherwise.
Yeah.
But how do you use your English skills to make a positive impact on the world?
That's a good question. I think it's all about purpose-driven learning. When you connect your language goals to something bigger than yourself, it gives your learning more meaning. It motivates you to keep going.
So it's about finding ways to use your English skills to serve others.
Exactly, to make a difference in your community, in the world.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? What are some concrete things you can do?
Well, you could volunteer to teach English to refugees or immigrants. You could use your language skills to advocate for social justice or to protect the environment. You could connect with people from different cultures and help build understanding and empathy.
Right. It's like language becomes this tool for building bridges, breaking down barriers.
It is. It helps create a more just and compassionate world.
I love that. But, even beyond those big things, you can make a difference in your everyday life. Every conversation you have, every interaction is an opportunity to connect, to learn, to share your unique perspective. You become an ambassador
In a way.
for your own culture, sharing your stories and experiences with the world. And in doing so, you're not just enriching your own life, but the lives of the people around you.
Yeah.
Speaking of enriching your life, you've highlighted some great resources and activities for exploring English-speaking cultures,
Yeah.
immersing yourself in their richness and diversity.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. What are some of your favorite ways to experience these cultures firsthand, even if you can't travel abroad?
I'm all about creating those immersive experiences, even if it's just in my own backyard. One of my favorite things to do is explore local cultural events and festivals.
So it's about seeking out those little pockets of English-speaking culture
Yeah.
that might exist right in your own community.
What about if you can't travel?
Right. If you can't physically go to those places.
Yeah. What are some ways to experience them virtually?
I think the digital world offers so many opportunities for that.
Oh, it does.
You can connect with people from English-speaking countries through online communities, social media platforms. You can take virtual tours of museums and historical landmarks. You can even attend online language exchange events or cultural workshops.
That's so cool.
It is. It's like you can travel the world from your couch.
I love that.
But, one of the most powerful ways to connect with other cultures is through storytelling. You've highlighted so many great books, movies, TV shows, podcasts that offer a glimpse into the lives of people from all these different backgrounds.
Yeah, I think stories are so powerful.
They really are.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorites, the stories that have really transported you to other cultures?
Oh, that's tough. There are so many. But I think at the heart of it, stories have this amazing ability to connect us across cultures. They help us understand each other. They help us see the world from different perspectives.
It's like you're walking in someone else's shoes, experiencing their joys and sorrows, their triumphs and struggles.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you gain a deeper understanding, not only of their lives, but of your own as well. But, you've also highlighted some great resources and techniques for developing what's called intercultural competence, navigating those complexities of communication across cultures.
It's so important. What are some of the key skills and qualities that we need to develop?
I think intercultural competence is all about being able to communicate effectively and respectfully with people from different cultures. It's about recognizing that your own cultural perspective, your own way of communicating isn't the only way.
Right.
And being adaptable and open-minded when you're interacting with people from different backgrounds.
It's about moving beyond our own bubbles and embracing all the richness and diversity out there.
I love that.
Yeah.
But how do we actually develop that? How do we become more interculturally competent?
I think it starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
We have to be aware of our own biases and assumptions and understand how they might be affecting the way we see things and interact with others.
So it's about taking a step back.
Yeah.
Examining your own cultural lens.
Exactly. And realizing that your way of seeing the world isn't the only way.
But how do you actually become more self-aware? Does that just happen naturally, or is it something you have to work on?
It's a journey. It's a process of reflection, learning, and growth. You can develop self-awareness by talking to people from different cultures, by reading about different perspectives, and by paying attention to your own thoughts and feelings and reactions, especially when you're in intercultural situations.
So it's about being curious, open-minded, and willing to question your own assumptions.
Exactly.
But, beyond self-awareness, I think empathy is really crucial.
That's huge.
You've highlighted a bunch of techniques for developing empathy, for understanding the perspectives of people from different cultures.
Yeah, empathy is all about putting yourself in other people's shoes, trying to understand how they think, how they feel, what they're going through.
Right.
And you can cultivate empathy by really listening to others, by asking questions to understand their perspective, and by being aware of your own body language.
So it's about creating a safe space, right?
Yeah.
For open and honest dialogue where you can learn from each other and really appreciate the beauty of those differences.
I love that.
But I also think adaptability is really important. You've highlighted some great strategies for navigating cultural differences and adjusting your communication style to different contexts. What are some of the most important things to keep in mind when you're interacting with people from other cultures?
Adaptability is all about being flexible and being willing to adjust your style to different situations. It's about recognizing that what might be considered polite or appropriate in one culture might not be in another.
So you have to be aware of those potential differences and be ready to adjust accordingly. But I think beyond all those specific cultural differences, the most important thing to remember is that we're all human. No matter where we come from, we all have the same basic needs and desires, and we all have something unique to offer the world.
I love that.
And I think that's a great place to end our conversation today.
Yeah, I think so too.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools for navigating the world of intercultural communication. But we've covered a lot today.
We have.
From active listening and finding language partners to celebrating those small wins and overcoming those plateaus. And I think it's time to take a break and let our listeners process all of this great information.
Sounds good to me.
We'll be back soon with more insights and strategies to help you rock your English conversations and connect with the world in meaningful ways.
Can't wait.
Until then, keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep those conversations flowing. Welcome back. As we've been going through all these fantastic tips and techniques, it's become so clear that there's no one right way to learn English through conversation.
No, there isn't. What works for one person might not work for another. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, different learning styles.
It's like you can't just use a cookie cutter approach. Right?
Exactly. You have to find what works for you.
And I remember in our earlier deep dives, you talked about the idea of personalization. Choosing topics and activities that really resonate with you.
Yeah.
Both Emma and Liam emphasize that.
Yeah, they do.
And it makes so much sense because when you're genuinely interested in what you're learning, the process becomes so much more enjoyable and effective.
Absolutely. If you're not interested, you're not going to learn as well.
It's like, think about it this way. Would you rather spend an hour struggling through a boring textbook on a topic you hate? Or would you rather spend an hour watching a documentary on something you're fascinated by?
Oh, the documentary for sure.
Right. Especially if it means you can pick up some English along the way.
Definitely. It's about finding ways to combine your passions with your learning.
Exactly. And that's what I love about this approach. It's like you're turning your hobbies into these secret language learning missions.
Exactly. Like if you love movies, watch English films with subtitles.
Right.
And as you get better, you can start turning the subtitles off.
Yeah. Or if you love to cook, try using English language cookbooks or watch cooking shows in English.
Yeah, there are so many possibilities. And the best part is you're not just learning English, you're also exploring things you're already passionate about.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like you're getting a double dose of learning.
Yeah.
But speaking of learning, you've highlighted some interactive exercises in your notes. Things like repeating phrases and practicing listening and responding. These might seem really simple, but I've actually tried some of them.
Well, what did you think?
I was surprised by how effective they are. It's amazing how much repetition can help solidify those language patterns in your brain. It's like you're building muscle memory for speaking.
It really is. It's like learning to play an instrument. You can't just read about music theory. You have to practice, play those scales over and over again until they become second nature.
Yeah, it's the same with language. You have to move beyond passive learning and actually engage with it.
Exactly.
But what's the best way to approach these exercises? Is it just about repeating things over and over, or is there more to it?
I think variety is key. Try different things. Repeat phrases out loud, record yourself and listen back. Try shadowing native speakers in movies or podcasts.
Shadowing? What's that?
It's basically mimicking a native speaker, trying to match their pronunciation and intonation as closely as possible.
Oh, that sounds challenging, but interesting. I'm going to have to try that.
Yeah, it's a great way to train your ear and develop a more natural-sounding accent.
Okay, that's definitely going on my list of language learning experiments. But one thing I've always struggled with is staying motivated.
Yeah, me too.
There are days when I'm super excited to practice, and then there are days when I just don't feel like it at all. What do you do on those days?
I remember Liam's advice about thinking of the process as a game. I try to keep that in mind. If you can find ways to make your learning more fun and engaging, it can make a big difference.
I love that. It's like turning language learning into a big adventure.
Exactly. Who doesn't love an adventure? You've clearly done your homework. You've gathered so much great information about learning English through conversation.
I've tried to.
What are some of the biggest things you've taken away from this deep dive?
For me, it's realizing that learning English isn't just about memorizing vocabulary or grammar rules. It's about connecting with people, being okay with making mistakes, and finding joy in the journey.
That's beautifully said. And I think that's the heart of language learning. It's about opening yourself up to new experiences, new perspectives, and new ways of seeing the world.
I couldn't agree more. This deep dive has been so insightful.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I feel like I've learned so much.
I hope so. And remember, there are so many people out there who are eager to connect with you, to share their stories, and to learn from you.
It's true.
So go out there, start those conversations, and embrace the adventure of language learning.
That's great advice. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into learning English through conversation. Until next time, keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep those conversations flowing.